Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast on whatever your favorite channel is. This is on 30 channels, so whatever on your own, just use that one. And while you're online, please visit globalinvestoragent.com. This is where you'll find real estate agents who are not typical. These agents are trained to work with you and I, the real estate investor. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off-market deals, which was a big deal for us. And if you are a real estate agent and you're not sure which way the economy is going, well, we can tell you what we think, but all it is prognostication. So I suggest, instead of panicking, prepare. Click on the Learn More button. Find out what this is all about. Make this part of your business model, because investors will love you as long as you can speak the language. You understand the methodology and the terminology. I'm telling you, you can make a lot of money with investors and learn how to invest yourself. Well, speaking of investors, let me introduce the guest today. We've got Deborah Razo, all the way from beautiful Southern California. So, Deborah, thanks for joining us. I'm so glad we have you. I've been waiting to do this one. I know we had a delay of a week, and I appreciate your patience, but it gave me more time to prepare too, so I'm excited about it,
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure people out your way probably are more familiar with you and where you've invested, but would you mind, for the folks listening, just paint a picture of how you got to where you are and what led up to that, so we have some context, and then we'll get into some of the projects you've had, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I guess it's important to note that I've been an investor for 30 plus years. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years. I've not been an investor that long. I actually only became an investor about 14 years ago. It'll be 14 years in October. And I got there in a strange way. I had an opportunity to start over in my life. And I actually was in a really bad car accident. And I think there are a lot of people that have those opportunities. Sometimes it's the death of a loved one or a divorce. Some people could be going through that right now with COVID, having, upturned their lives. But for me, it was a car accident, and I was in an SUV and I was a passenger, and we were driving along and a tire blew, and the driver lost control of the car and we flipped. And we flipped driver's side first, so I got crushed. And, I was airbacked to a hospital because I had a head wound, and that's where they told me I had a broken neck. And that was like the beginning of a little over a year-long healing process for me. And it was a lot of realizations, right? There was this realization that I was an entrepreneur, but I didn't really own my business. My business owned me. What I had done is made myself a job, and I think that's a lot of, entrepreneurs. We start out and, we're the janitor, the cook, we're every part of it. And what we've done is made ourselves a job. And what I realized was I had a good life, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the life I wanted. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to show my kids that I could do that. I wanted to have time freedoms and energy freedoms, and I wasn't living that life. And if there was anything that, that this accident showed me, it's like, you better live now. You don't know what's going to happen next, right? So there was a little bit of urgency to it too, like when I realized. And my brother, God bless him, came out and helped take care of me. I actually was a single mom, and I had 2 kids in high school at the time. Whoa. And he came out and took care of me, and I was talking to him about all of this. And he had been through a bunch of Tony Robbins seminars. And he said, Deborah, if you're really serious about wanting to change things, you might want to go to one of his seminars, because it all starts with mindset. And I said, okay, so after the doctors signed off on me, I went to a seminar. Oh, but before I went to the seminar, I started Googling passive income.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted passive income, right? And I was like, how do you get that? Google it. That's how you get it. And a lot of stuff comes up, like royalties and real estate and real estate. Of course, the little purple book I had read, Rich Dad, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book, and so I was like, I need to get me some real estate, but I didn't know how. And I went to my first Tony Robbins event, and be honest with you, I started drinking the Kool-Aid. I went to every one of his events, and I actually work for him now. I'm one of a bunch of trainers worldwide. There's about just under 200 of us, and he flies us out to the events to actually help people make their own transitions at these events. And I learned a lot. I started learning about what I wanted. I started learning about how to get that. It was really educating. And even though I was in these environments where, you're supposed to get out of your comfort zone, it was still really hard. Like, I was scared, and I started with flipping. I love flipping. I still flip to this day. And what I would do is I would flip something in Los Angeles, and then I would reinvest that money into buy and holds. So I still have a small portfolio of single families in Memphis, Tennessee. Was my market of choice at the time, and I still have those. And then as time grew and my skill sets grew, I started developing here in Los Angeles and buying multifamilies. So I have a few multifamilies in Texas and Arizona. And I actually just opened up a bed and breakfast in Puerto Rico. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I love everything real estate. And along the way, I opened up the Women's Real Estate Network, REN, and it's a networking association for women real estate investors. So we can collaborate and help each other go towards our goals. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah. And by the way, that's WREN?
WREN, Women's Real Estate Network.
Awesome. Well, I'm really intrigued, and I read up about you, but I didn't go back far enough to realize you had broken your neck. And here's ironic. I actually broke my back in two places.
Oh.
And guess what? It was the winter of 2011 when that happened. And so I sound like probably about the same time, but same thing. I'm laying there like stunned. I'm like, man, this isn't like, gee, I got a broken rib or a broken femur or a broken, just like, I wasn't walking. I'm sure the same thing with you. They took my driver's license away. They're like, you're going to get out of here eventually, but you're not going to be driving. And, it was supposed to be months and months. A lot of painful.
You get a lot of time to think.
Oh my gosh. I tell you what, as crazy as it sounds, Deborah, looking back on it, obviously, very painful experience in a lot of ways, emotionally, physically. I mean, I was just, I was running businesses, and, one kid in college, one going to college, going through a divorce, by the way. And, but the thing is, something hit me that the day after surgery, I woke up at 7 a.m. I worked 17 hours straight that day. I refused all medication. The nurses, I must have drove them crazy. They were like, you have to take this. Like, I can't take that stuff. I have to be alert and awake. And I tried to tell them, you don't understand. You know how much college is these days? You know how much my ex wants every month?
Right.
But in any case, it was an unbelievable sense of peace and calm. And I was able to focus like I never focused before, never watched that. I finally got rid of my television in 2015. I kept it because I just thought everybody's got to have a television, but I didn't watch it. As soon as that happened in 2011, no more TV. And it's just an amazing what an event like that in life will do for you. So I admire you, and God bless you for what you went through. And you talk about, being able to not just survive, but thrive, and improvise, adapt, overcome.
I think that's for a lot of people, I think you don't understand it when you're in it. So if anybody out there is listening and they're in it right now, believe me, it'll get better. But, I think I remember when I was in it, waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like an elephant was sitting on my chest, thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, I can't even walk, right? Like you, right? Yeah. And having being forced to kind of surrender a lot of the stuff, luckily, I'm a woman of faith, and so there was a spiritual element to it too, and I think that's what really got me through. But I think that is what happens to everyone. You don't see it while you're in it, but then it changes you in some ways, and you can either decide if it's going to change you for the better or the worst. And I was like, no, I'm going to honor life right now, and for me that meant living it full out, like changing things that I wanted to change, and making the life I wanted to make,
Well, it's really poignant that you said that, because I know for me, I actually got to the point where a doctor told me, because there was so much going on. I mean, it was just crazy. I had one of my businesses I own, the manager decided to take advantage of the situation and embezzle from me, because I wouldn't know that's what they thought. And in any case, this doctor said, "Well, you have no hope." It's like my life was like it was too bad for even a country song, So, and he said, "You have no hope." But the funny thing is I'm like, it really hit me, but in a positive way, because I'm thinking, but I'm still here. I can move, I can think, I can talk, and thankfully my surgeon did the opposite. He said, if you do everything I tell you to do, and you're not only you're gonna surf and ski and everything else. He said, you're gonna walk out of here, and you're gonna do everything you want to do and even more. And that's the belief I chose to have. And the rest they say is history. But there were some trying moments. There were moments I literally it wasn't even day by day. It was, I literally, moment by moment. Dear Lord, just get me to the next moment. And I'd go to a window, look at the sun just to warm my face for 60 seconds, and go back downstairs and just deal with whatever was happening then. And the funny thing is when you know what you have to do, and you just take action, you just focus on the present moment, what's directly in front of me, that's when the miracles start to occur. And that's what happened, So, in any case, you and I, we're going to we'll have to talk more.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is unbelievable. But so take us into to the real estate, because it sounds like through your life transitions, that and maybe other events and circumstances led you to real estate. So can you kind of tell me about that? Like, who did you learn from? What did you try first? That type of thing. Because I want the listeners to really grasp what that was like for you,
Yeah, sure. First of all, I just want to say, I started just by educating, free education, a lot of free education, right? There's a lot out there. There's YouTube University, there's podcasts, there's real estate club meetings, right? And I just started doing all that because I didn't know what I wanted at the time, and I think like any newbie, you kind of come into real estate and it's shiny object syndrome, like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do that. And I realized that was happening to me. And then I stood back for a minute, because if there's anything my accident told me, it's you want passive income. And so I really needed to focus on passive income. But at the time, I didn't have any income, and I needed to figure out a way to get passive income. And one of my mentors said, you need a financial philosophy. And I was raised very blue collar. Both of my parents were immigrants. Like, I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means, and I had to figure out, and he was like, you got to figure out where you want to go, and you've got to get a map to get there. Right. So I was like, okay, I know I want passive income. I need money to actually buy rentals. So I'm going to try flipping, because I think that would be fun, and that I'd be good at it. And so that's what I did. I borrowed some money from my brother. Luckily, I made a bunch of money on my first flip. And I was like, okay, I gained confidence, right? I got a mentor in to help mentor me on that first flip. I gained confidence. And so then I started doing that. But then I had to overcome the hurdle of, okay, now I need the passive income. And I think just like anybody new to the industry, you're like, okay, I'm going to buy a house around the corner and rent it out. Well, around my corners in LA, you can't make passive income. You can't do cash flow around here, which made me realize I was going to have to go outside of LA, which at that time was outside of my comfort zone, right? So I had to kind of figure out, like, what is stopping me from going to another place? Like, I Googled the best cash flowing cities in the United States. And I'm like, all right, these are proven, right? But what do I need to make me feel comfortable to get into that? Which I realized was I needed to learn about that area. And then I also needed to feel good about a team in that area. And so that's what I did. I dove into learning about Memphis, Tennessee, and getting a team. And but I think like anybody who gets into this business, you're scared, and you're scared you're going to make a mistake. And so I was very slow in buying my first property. In fact, there was a guy, I was going to all these real estate club meetings, and there was this guy who already had a bunch of cash flowing properties in Memphis. So I would always hang out with him and, I don't know, try to glean some information from him, right? And at one point he turned to me and he goes, Deborah, how long have you been saying you're going to buy a property? You haven't bought one yet. And I'm like, I know, I'm almost there. I'm going to do it. And he was like, no, I want to know the date you're going to have a cash flow rent check in your hand. And I'm like, you're like, you want me to have an actual date right now? And he's like, yes. And he made me tell him a date. And honestly, I don't think he even recorded that date, but I knew what I had said. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it by this date. And it was that accountability. It was that, kind of coaching that made me actually step through and do it. And sure enough, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. We built up all this fear in our head, right? And so I went ahead and I pulled the trigger. And then within the next year, I bought 2 more, and then I was on a roll, right? So then I had my investment philosophy. I'd flip and then I'd buy, and then I'd flip and then I'd buy, and then I'd flip and then I'd buy. And I did that until I ran out of money.
Okay. Well, let's do a quick pause there. So just to recap, but by the way, Mark Twain famously said 97% of what we worry about never actually happens, And boy, is he right. Now, that was my problem in the early days. I was a worrier. Now that's faith. Well, I got to tell you, for those of you listening, just, you just believe, just faith. I don't know how people do without it. It's hard to describe it. I mean, in fact, who was it? St. Francis said, for those who believe, no words are necessary. For those who don't, no words are possible. I'm not saying go out and break your neck or break your back like Deborah and I, but maybe something like that is what we need sometimes, a 4x4 upside the head to bring it down to earth and teach you that living in the present moment, being grateful for what we have right now, okay, is the most important thing you can do. And it is moment by moment. And when you set your goals and have your vision, you just turn it over. Let God take care of the result. You focus on taking action. You master the art of taking perfect action. And by the way, there is no such thing as perfect action, but you know what I'm getting at. So Deborah, back to you. So what I'm gathering is, and I want everybody to pay attention to this. Deborah flipped a home in Southern California, and I can't tell how many people I've taught from California. I mean, thousands. And one of the biggest fears is I can't make money here. It's just too darn expensive. How can I afford to flip $1 million house? I can't even buy one for myself. But Deborah did it, and I know a lot of other people that do it too. And here's something really critical. So, Deborah, it sounds like you would take the money from your flipping and you would redeploy that in the long-term game, the buy and hold. Am I kind of following you there? Okay.
Absolutely. That was my outcome, right? I wanted the cash flow. Yeah.
Yep. And what's interesting is a market like California, what makes it such a good flipping market is, it's going to go up. It's like a mathematical certainty. We're going to have a recession. People ask me, we're going to have a recession here. I'm like, absolutely guaranteed. Well, what do you want to hit? Well, I don't know. We all we can do is guess. But why panic? Don't panic. The name of the game is to prepare. So in any case, so back to this. You would flip, pick up some income producing properties that throw off rent, do go up in value, but then you said you ran out of money. So you had to learn another strategy then, right? At that point.
I did. I had to learn another strategy, and so. So what had actually happened is that I was picking up property, but then so I had my active income, which was my flipping, and I was gaining passive income, and then my debt to income ratio was all off, because any entrepreneur, anybody who's ever started a business, we try not to declare any income, right? So we look poor, so we don't don't always qualify for the loans, very easily, right? But I picked up a few houses, and the next thing you know, my debt to income ratio is all off, and they don't want to loan to me anymore. And I'm like, well, now what do I do? I'm not at my financial freedom number. I really need to look at this. And I'll tell you, it was really a mindset shift. And that was, even though I'd been an entrepreneur for several years, what I'd really been is a lone wolf, right? I was lone wolfing it. Like, I was doing it all myself. My flips I did myself. My buy and holds I did myself. I was trying to finance it all myself. It was all lone wolf mentality. And I was being coached that and you hear the slogans, right? Real estate is a team sport. Your network is your net worth. You hear all the slogans, but you're like, no, I'm going to muscle through, and I couldn't. And I really had to open myself up to different types of partnerships that would pull me over into bigger deals, pull me over into bigger numbers. Hi, by the way, hello, another reason to panic in the middle of the night, right? And make me grow. And at the same time, personally, I'm growing. So is my pocketbook, right? But it was a whole different journey to journey into that, category. So the learning continues. You want to be a real estate investor? Get used to uncomfortable. That's all I've got to say.
You do. You have to really put yourself out there. And what's interesting is there are methods or there are processes to follow. Property identification. Well, first it's area identification. Where should I invest right now? What's the best place looking out the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? Then property identification, then property analysis, then financial analysis. How can I structure this deal to modify the cash flow so that it makes sense now as well as in the future? And when you follow that model, and the hardest part is to actually listen to what the methods are telling you. What are the results telling you? In other words, trust the data. Trust the data. And when you stick to those guidelines, generally you make pretty good decisions. I know that in fact, I'll just admit fully in my life, particularly in investing in real estate, the times where I didn't do so well were typically because I was too hasty, acting too quickly, trying to do too many things, do too many projects, and I didn't pay attention to the due diligence. And and when I would learn my lesson, I go right back to the basics, just like Michael Jordan, any pro athlete will tell you. You know what? The person who studies karate, the black belt does the same exact kata as a white belt. They just done it 10,000 times.
Right.
It's the fundamentals. So,
and I think that's so true. I mean, and knowing how to run your numbers and knowing how to trust your numbers when you run them. I mean, it's so important. And I remember, like, when I my first flip, let's just say, like I told you, I was from a very middle class family, and here was this thing called hard money, and they were 10, 12, 14% interest. I really thought it was mafia money. I was like, who am I doing business with? The interest rates are at 3% and I'm paying 12. But, I had a mentor that showed me how to do the numbers and was like, this works. As long as it works, what does it matter what you pay? Right? As long as it works, does it matter what you pay a wholesaler? As long as it works, you know what I mean? And you start to understand to trust your numbers, right? But you got to run your numbers. I think the times that I've failed too, Gary, are times when I was hasty, when I was into a deal just because I, wanted to be in a deal or something. Yeah.
Sometimes that innate desire to win and succeed gets the best of us. Because property can look beautiful, everything can line up, but we didn't take the time to do all the due diligence on it. And then when you find the warts, that's usually after you've already signed on the dotted line, So, so in any case, now looking forward here, you mentioned Memphis. Are you still looking in what I would consider the lower right corner of the country? We call that the right half of the smile, which is Beaumont, Texas, all the way to Florida and up to North Carolina, and Tennessee is in the middle there. I get it; it's not on the coast, but it's amazing. I'm going to stop talking here, but because I'll get excited. But is that the general area where you're looking for the buy and hold strategy, or kind of, if you don't mind sharing what your vision is going forward for investing?
Hi, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book Global Investor Agent is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from brand new agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders, some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklists to follow to not just survive, but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent. And for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I'm always looking at things in Memphis. In fact, there's some new things going on in the city itself right now that are intriguing, and I already have a team there, right? So, I think, I've been investing there now, almost 10 years. So, I have knowledge of, I've probably used every property manager in the city. I have knowledge of them. When I go into a city, and by the way, take this tip, when I go into a city that I'm not necessarily always in, I always go to the local real estate club, right? And meet the local real estate investors, man, the best wealth of information. And so, yeah, I still have those connections. I maintain those connections. So it's always someplace that I'm looking at. I recently just invested in Puerto Rico, and I did that because I had a friend move there. She was facing a bunch of capital gains, and she found out that she could liquidate a lot of her stuff and move to Puerto Rico and not have to face a lot of the tax consequences. But so anybody who moves to a tropical island that's my friend, I raise my hand and say, yeah, can I come visit? So of course I did. And of course, because we're both into real estate, we ended up talking real estate and driving around and realizing that there's a lot of tax opportunities there. There's a lot of tax incentives that they're giving for people to make Airbnbs and hotels and that kind of thing. So I just opened up a bed and breakfast there in the past 2 months.
Okay.
So I definitely look at different places. I definitely invest in different areas. I'm a girl that likes multiple exits. So I like to structure my deals so that you have multiple exits. If one falls through, there's always another one. I think being a real estate entrepreneur, you definitely need to be a on your feet problem solver. I jokingly say that my phone doesn't ring unless there's a problem on the other end. And it's the truth. Like, I never pick up the phone and they say, hey, everything's going great. That never happens. So you're very used to picking up the phone and going, all right, what's going on? And, and trying to solve problems. And I think having multiple exits gives you the flexibility to maneuver in the deals themselves. So it works really well. So I definitely go into different areas. I don't have any buy and holds in LA. I have, when I was building, when I developed things, I was taking single families that were zoned multi and knocking them down and building fourplexes. And I did have renters then. But we started to fall into COVID, and that became really hard, which if there's any landlords out there that are still dealing with COVID renters, my heart goes out to you. And so we ended up selling those fourplexes, and so it's been a crazy journey, and it still continues. But I've learned a lot along the way, and I still continue to learn more.
Yeah. Well, now when you talk about exit strategies, so the historically the most common exit strategy owning real estate is traditional rentals. 1-year leases with could be a young family with 1 or 2 children, a single person, a young couple, or just roommates, that kind of thing. But as our culture and our country evolves and the world evolves, along comes the short-term rentals. It used to be people had bed and breakfast out of their homes, out in the country and on the beach and things like that. And along comes Airbnb that figured out how to commercialize that, and then they went public a few years ago, and you're here to stay. But are there other extra strategies? Like, for example, I really like midterm rentals, which is your business travelers. It's called corporate housing, traveling nurses, film crews. There's film crews will go all over the country to film movies for 3 or 6 or 9 months, and all those people, they need places to stay, and they don't want to stay in hotels, right? So, of your extra strategies, do you have a favorite, or are you using? You mentioned Airbnb, but any others that you can think of that could work for other people too?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to partner in projects. Like, there was one in particular, and unfortunately, it was the one I let get away. It was a flip that I let get away, and this flip was actually about 3 hours drive outside my area, and it was a woman who came to me. Because because of the women's network I have, she came to me, and her dad had passed, and she had this 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but it was up in Cambria, California, which is about 3 hours away from me. And her dad was a bit of a collector, i.e. a hoarder. And normally it would be a house that I would take on instantly. But because it was so far away, I hesitated. I was like, well, why don't I help you sell this, or try to sell it to a wholesaler for you, because it wasn't in a condition where it would qualify for a conventional loan. But it was a block and a half from the beach, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so we put it out to the wholesaling community and really did not get the offers that she wanted. And it wasn't until then that I was like, well, what is it that you want? And how could I get that to you? And I think it was a matter of me going back and kind of asking myself a different question, which is, how could I do this? Right? Is there a way for me to be able to do this? And then I was like, well, if I did it, I might be able to have her seller finance. It was free and clear. I could, I could give her a down payment. She could sell her finance. And then she's actually making interest on her money, and she would get more money in the long run because of the interest I'm paying her. And then I was like, but I can't be away all the time. And then I was like, well, maybe I should try to partner. And so I reached out to a few of my friends that are flippers, and I said, anybody want to partner with me? We could tag team each other, go back and forth, right? But that's an example of just like, okay, I got to think about this differently. I got to ask myself different questions to figure out how to do this. And so we did that. She ended up saying yes, that she would sell her finance for me. And the other person ended up saying yes, that they would partner with me. So we ended up taking on the project. And then I ended up getting somebody else to put a second on the house for the rehab money. And so here we are, we're clipping along. Now, what I didn't expect, once again, was this was a very small community. So there weren't necessarily that many workers. There were craftsmen around. I'm like, I need a bid for the kitchen. They were like, we could come out and give you an estimate in 8 weeks. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm going to be done in 8 weeks. Right. It was like, so we were really working with this like mentality there and we were having a hard time getting both products and labor. And then once again, we started thinking, let's ask ourselves a different question. How could we get this done? And we ended up renting a truck, buying our products at our regular places in Los Angeles and trucking it up there. And we even had our regular flooring person truck up there and do our flooring at this place. And we paid them, and they got a week's stay at the beachfront property after it was done. Right? Like there's always there's always something you can give, right? And they loved it, we loved it, and was coming up with these creative solutions, right? And looking at the problem differently. And then we wanted to keep it. Like I said, it was a block and a half from the beach. At the time, though, in this particular city, you couldn't short-term rent things without a special license. And they only offered these licenses within a geographic area of the person with the other license. And there were too many licenses already offered, so we ended up having to sell it. But it was a great opportunity for me to learn how to look at something differently and make lemonade out of lemons, right? And I think you just have to start thinking those ways.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing better than the good old fashioned brainstorming session. And we'll just, and now of course, everybody is on Zoom, it seems like, and you can do the whiteboard on Zoom and just put ideas up. And we always tell people, look, don't critique them, analyze them, judge them or anything. Right now, we're just identifying all the possibilities, and we challenge ourselves to come up with 10 possibilities. And then we try to do is narrow it down to the best three, right? And maybe we'll eventually do all three, but right now we're trying to pick the one that makes the most sense and flesh it out. And that you train your brain to think abstractly and creatively. And that's one of the keys to success. It's basically, it's part of problem solving. And you mentioned this in the beginning. You've got to really be a good problem solver. And if you're not born that way, most of us aren't, you learn it by practicing. And the only way to practice, folks listening here, is to just get out there and do it. And join your local investor club. Be part of organization. If you're a woman, be part of REN. Hey, I know we're short on time here. Would you mind talking about REN? Because I want to have, especially women. Yeah. My mom raised us by herself, so this is really particularly special to me. And I saw what it was like, and she hurt her back too. She didn't have a broken back or anything, but it was just lower back slip disc. And this was back in the 70s when that was they did right by today's standards, that'd be considered barbaric what they did back then, so we as kids learn how to cook and clean and go do the grocery shop. And I was in third grade, so watching her go what she went through and hearing what you went through, I want people to know, particularly women, if you're a guy listening, tell your wife, tell your girlfriend, tell your sister, tell your daughter, tell your mother. So I'm probably doing too much talk here. Go ahead and tell us about REN.
I'll tell you what happened. It was, I was flipping, and a lot of the big box Wall Street started coming in and buying up a lot of the distressed housing. And so all of my offers were getting turned down, and it was frustrating. And, I was like, where are my girls? Why am I not surrounding myself with, my women friends? And so I put a group of women friends together who, for a brunch, just a regular brunch. And they weren't all flippers. Like, there's two women, they own like 18 storage units across the country. And there's, another woman who does all kinds of notes. And there was all these different women. And, sure enough, we're together, and then we're like, oh, I have this problem. Oh, you need this kind of lawyer? I have that kind of lawyer for you. Or you have a foundation issue? I've done this before on a foundation issue. And we just all started naturally helping each other. And then I said, I want to meet quarterly. And they were like, no, let's meet every other month. And people started opening up their homes, and there was always wine involved because that's the best way for it to flow. And so, I started doing business with these women. Like, and it's like, you're talking about brainstorming. You've got to have the people around you. You've got to have the support around you to feel secure, to feel comfortable sharing your problems with, and know that they're going to actually give you some great ideas for solutions back, and that's what this became for me. And I realized at one point, I'm like, gosh, I get to surround myself with these women. And there's all these other women investors out there that don't even know about these powerhouses. So I started a meetup in LA, and next thing you know, we grew, and we had 12 chapters all over the country, and then COVID hit, and we went online, and so there's still an online community of us, and that's what we do. We talk to each other, we give each other support, we give each other suggestions, we lend each other contacts, we it's a networking organization, and honestly, I've gotten so much out of it. I know some of my members would say the same thing, but when I became a developer, I only did it because I heard a developer speak at one of our chapters up in Seattle. And I went up to her and I said, oh, you don't hear from many women developers. And she said, well, you're a flipper, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, I used to be a flipper, developing so much easier. And then we ended up having this long conversation. And it was like, oh, I never thought of myself as a developer because I didn't know any women developers, right? So it just opened up this whole field to me. And then I realized I could do this too. And if there's anything I want women to realize is that you can do this too, right? Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of us out there. And for any agents that want to be investors, you've got your hand on the pulse of things. Become an investor, you have to utilize what it is your skill set is, and it's a great skill set to have. So yeah, so that's what Ren is all about.
Okay. And it's the website is reninspires.com. So it's WREN inspires altogether, guys.com. And then how about the meetup? Is the meetup, you said there's 12 chapters. Is it the same meetup title, I guess you call it, or the name of
All
the
Ren
group?
Inspires. Yeah, all Ren
Ren
Inspires.
Inspires.
Facebook is Ren Inspires. Instagram is Ren Inspires. It's Ren Inspires.
Okay. Well, and then, so people just Google it and they go in the meetup, they can join. Meetup's free, guys. As a consumer, you just join it. At one point, I had 30 some odd different meetups around the country myself, and we use that in combination with the website and Facebook and everything. And it was a wonderful thing. I mean, I've been thinking lately. Heck, it's funny you mentioned this, because this over the weekend I was looking at it thinking, I wonder, I should probably resurrect that again and keep doing it, because that was actually kind of cool. But in any case, I what everybody to take away from this is this. You know, most of us start off with probably pretty much nothing. I mean, Deborah and I both, we come out of a pretty big crisis moment. Broken neck is a major injury. And if you just have a little bit of faith, that was one of the lessons out of this. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Ask for help. Ask questions. Learn. It's another thing Deborah said is she learned. The first thing she said she did was learn. Okay. And then she took action. Even when she was afraid, thankfully, God sent the right person at the right time, at the right place to say the right thing as, hey, Deborah, it's been a year and a half now and you still haven't bought a property yet. When are you gonna cash? We're gonna have that first rent check in your hand. When's that gonna be? Right. Be open to someone like that finding you or you're finding them. Okay. Deborah, any other words of wisdom, anything you can put out there? I just want people to feel like, you know what, if Deborah can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. You know what? The only other thing that I'm going to say is that a lot of people are afraid to raise their hand and ask questions. And, I really encourage that, nobody's going to look stupid about asking a question. A question is going to open up an avenue to learning. And as somebody who used to be afraid of asking a question, now I don't care what anybody thinks. Like, I don't know what that means. You're using words I don't understand, right? Ask a question. You're always going to learn something, get over yourself and how you think that might look, just ask questions and learn.
That's perfect. Yeah, you're definitely you're what I call a lifetime learner, and usually lifetime learners become lifetime teachers, because in the process of teaching, guys, this is what's cool about this. You actually learn every time we do a podcast. I learn something new. I mean, it's just the most amazing thing. So, all right, I tell you what, Deborah, I'm going to have Deborah reach my Beverly. Beverly's my implementer, right hand person. Reach out to you because I want to have you teach. I teach a class every Monday called Monday Night Live. If you're interested, I'll have her reach out to you. But back to I'll also stay on before we finish this. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But for everyone listening, I hope you got as much out of this as I did. This is one of my favorite podcasts. Okay, and you know me, I probably said that 3 times in the last 3 years. So if you could please leave a review, that's what make the podcast world go around. We love your reviews. We need them. That's the currency that allows us to keep going. Believe it or not, we don't get paid for doing this, but your reviews allow us to be published more. So that's why it's important. And while you're out there, go visit reninspires.com. Go look it up on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the social media channels, and on meetup.com. Join a local chapter. And if you don't see one in the area, I'm pretty sure Deborah will help you set one up in your area. So do that. Be a leader. Be the Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see. Somebody's got to start it, guys or girls. Somebody's got to be first. Might as well be you. So any case, while you're out there online, make sure you visit globalinvestoragent.com. Find yourself one of these investor agents. This fits in perfectly with what Deborah's doing. I mean, she's in LA, investing in Memphis and Puerto Rico. We don't have an agent in Puerto Rico now, but we have in Memphis. We got agents in 37 states. Grab one of those guys. Make him part of your team because you need a good agent. Believe me, the way the world is today, they're worth their weight in gold. Forget the old agents. I'm not knocking other agents. I'm just saying this is unique. It's different. And if you want to be part of that and you are an agent, you definitely should click on the Learn More button because the market is changing. And we don't know when it's going to make a correction, but We're already heading that direction. I just can't tell you when. If I did, we'd all be gajillionaires. But don't wait. Don't panic. Just prepare. And for everyone here, I want to thank you for participating and listening and sharing. Thank you, Deborah, again. And for everybody here, God bless you and your families. And we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.